Twilight cloaked Ouagadougou in a crimson hue, as if the sky, drained by the heat of the day, was spilling its blood over the capital. The dusty streets still hummed with motorcycle horns and street vendors' calls, but a quiet tension floated in the air, invisible to most passers-by, yet sharply felt by those who knew the shadows of power. Inside the corridors of the presidential palace, Captain Amadou Kaboré, interim head of state, walked with a purposeful step. At 34, he carried the burden of a country riddled with crises, terrorism, poverty, and political intrigue. His face, usually unreadable, was strained that evening. His dark, slightly narrowed eyes scanned every nook, every flickering shadow under the chandeliers. "Mr. President, they're ready," announced his aide-de-camp, Lieutenant Sadogo, opening the thick wooden door to the crisis room. The man, a large, deep-voiced veteran of special operations, looked tense, a rare sight. The room was stark, lit by pale neon lights. Around a long, polished table sat the generals most loyal to Kaboré, those who had supported his ascent to power in October 2022. They waited in silence, their spotless uniforms in contrast with their weary expressions. The air was saturated with a nearly physical tension, as if every breath risked upsetting the delicate balance. Kaboré sat at the head of the table, placed his palms on the gleaming wood, and inhaled deeply. His steady, controlled voice sliced through the silence like a blade. "Gentlemen, I have just received serious intelligence." He opened a bright red folder marked with the presidential seal and laid it before him. "There is a plot underway to overthrow this government." A shudder swept through the room. The generals exchanged glances, some anxious, others skeptical. Colonel Zongo, the intelligence chief, a thin man with silver-rimmed glasses, stood and began circulating black and white photographs. "These shots were taken recently. We've confirmed secret meetings in a warehouse on the city's outskirts, arms shipments masked as humanitarian aid, encrypted messages intercepted by our teams." He paused, his gaze locking with Kaboré's. "Senior officers are involved." A cold silence fell over the room. Kaboré reviewed the documents one by one, his expression hardening with each new page. The photos were blurry, but the dossiers were detailed, names unmistakable. "I know some of these men," he murmured. "Officers I personally promoted, brothers I shared sleepless nights with, planning the defense of this country." Suddenly he stood and slammed his hand on the table, making the room flinch. "We strike tonight. Prepare an immediate operation. I want these men in custody before sunrise." He swept his eyes across the room, burning with resolve. "But let's be clear. No unnecessary violence. The people of Burkina Faso demand justice, not revenge." Colonel Zongo nodded silently. "And what about civilians involved?" he asked. Kaboré didn't flinch. The next few hours became a whirlwind. In the palace courtyard, officers shouted orders as armored vehicles left one after another in silence. Over the capital, helicopters flew low, their muffled rumble blending with the sounds of the city falling asleep. Elite troops in balaclavas surrounded their targets. Wealthy villas, abandoned buildings, even a discreet hotel that had hosted secret gatherings. At the stroke of midnight, the operation was launched simultaneously across the country with surgical precision. When the first light of dawn crept across the sky, Kaboré, still in the crisis room, received the long-awaited situation reports. The outcome was a resounding success. Officers and 9 civilians had been captured without a single shot fired. Weapon stockpiles, assault rifles, grenades, even rocket launchers had been seized, along with hard drives full of damning evidence, detailed plans, chain of command charts, encrypted communications. The news spread through Ouagadougou like wildfire. Crowds spontaneously gathered in the Place de la Nation, waving the red and green flags of the country. Cries rose up, carried by a wave of relief and collective emotion. "Kaboré, protector of the nation, our shield." That night, the president addressed the country in a televised speech. Standing before the flag, dressed in military garb, he spoke with a somber weight that riveted viewers. "People of Burkina Faso, We have just neutralized a major attempt to destabilize our republic, led by those who betrayed our trust. I promise you, justice will prevail under our laws. No traitor will escape what they deserve. But I also call for unity. Our strength lies in our ability to endure, together. After his speech, Kaboré returned to his office, drained yet relieved. The portraits of past presidents lining the walls seemed to watch him silently. A soft knock at the door. Colonel Zongo entered, carrying a file. "Sir, the interrogations have begun." General Ouagadougou said something strange. Kaboré frowned. "What did he say?" Zongo hesitated, choosing his words carefully. He said, "You haven't yet understood who's really behind all this." Then he refused to say more. A chill passed through Kaboré. A disturbing feeling settled in his chest, the sense that something crucial was still missing. "Continue the interrogations. I want everything." Zongo placed a document on the desk. "There's more, sir." This was found among Ouagadougou's personal belongings. It was a handwritten list, scribbled in black ink. Kaboré scanned it quickly, his pulse increasing as he recognized names, officers, civil servants, businessmen, and then he stopped. Circled in red, Issouf Zongo, his childhood friend, his brother of heart. He stared at the paper, as if the letters might rearrange themselves and erase what he was reading. "Mr. President, do you know this man?" Zongo asked, noting his silence. Kaboré recomposed himself, masking his feelings behind his usual firmness. "Keep going, Colonel. I need to think alone." Alone in his office, Kaboré walked to the window. In the distance, the lights of Ouagadougou shimmered faintly. Could Issouf really be involved? His childhood friend, his closest confidant, his shield. A flood of memories surged, sharp and painful. Two boys running through the dusty alleys of Ouagadougou, their laughter echoing in the dry air, playing with a ball made of plastic bags tied together. Issouf, always bigger, always ready to stand up to the neighborhood. "Bullies. No one touches Amadou," he used to shout, fists clenched, outside school. Their bond had endured. At age 10, sitting on a hill overlooking the town, they watched the horizon, hearts swelling with hope. "We'll change this country," said young Amadou, eyes full of dreams. "Together," replied Issouf, sealing it with a handshake. Then life pulled them apart. Amadou climbed the ranks of the military, hardened by discipline. Issouf studied agronomy in Dakar, returning to work in local government, helping rural communities. They saw each other less, but each time they met, the flame of their oath returned. When Kaboré had taken power in the midst of chaos and jihadist attacks, he had offered Issouf a key position in government. Issouf had declined with a gentle smile. "I'm more useful among the people. They need to see we're still with them." Kaboré had admired that answer, never suspecting it might hide something more. He shook his head, unable to believe it. A mistake? A setup? He called his security chief, Commander Kaboré. "I want discreet surveillance on Issouf Zongo. No arrests, no questions, just eyes, and keep this between us." The following days were excruciating. While the people rejoiced at the plot's collapse, Kaboré carried alone the heavy weight of suspicion. Reports arrived, describing a quiet life. Issouf worked at the Ministry of Agriculture, visited his grandmother in the village every weekend, played football with neighborhood kids. His laughter still echoed down the streets. Nothing suspicious, but one morning a security agent dropped off a USB drive. "Sir, footage from 3 days before the operation. A warehouse in the suburbs." Kaboré plugged it into his laptop. Grainy footage showed Issouf entering the building carrying a bag. 2 hours later, he exited, scanning his surroundings nervously. "This warehouse belongs to a shell company tied to General Ouagadougou," the agent explained. Kaboré's heart sank. More evidence arrived, an audio recording of a clandestine meeting. A familiar voice, calm and confident, spoke. "The system is rotten from the inside. It must be rebuilt from scratch. The time is near." Kaboré listened over and over again, searching for doubt, a sign, a crack. It could be fake, he whispered, eyes brimming. But the evidence mounted. Secret meetings, money transfers, encrypted chats linking Issouf to the conspiracy. 1 week later, Kaboré made a heartbreaking decision. He needed to hear the truth from Issouf himself, not as a president, but as a brother. "Prepare an unmarked car," he ordered his aide-de-camp. "I'm going to Ouagadougou tomorrow morning, alone." "Sir, that violates every protocol," Sadogo objected. "In the army, orders aren't debated, Lieutenant. No one must know." After some negotiation, Kaboré agreed to a discreet escort, but only if they stayed back and intervened only on his command. At dawn, a dusty Toyota Corolla slipped out of the palace. The tires crackled over the gravel. Wearing a blue boo-boo and a worn cap, Kaboré drove himself, lost in thought. After 5 hours of rough roads, he reached the outskirts of Ouagadougou. The town was unchanged, its noisy markets, sandy streets, lined with mango trees, the old mosque in the distance. Avoiding the main roads, he took a dirt path toward a small village where Issouf's family owned an ancestral home. He parked beneath an ancient kapok tree, its gnarled roots gripping the earth like claws. The house stood quietly, built of banco with a rusting tin roof. No sounds, but the bleating of goats and a distant rooster. The escort remained hidden, stationed. At a distance, Kaboré knocked on the door. No answer. He gently pushed it open. The hinges creaked. In the dim light, Issouf knelt on a prayer mat, completing his salat. He rose slowly, eyes meeting Amadou's. "I knew you'd come," he said softly, almost solemn. "Eventually." "Why?" Kaboré asked, voice cracking. With emotion, Issouf met his gaze calmly. "Because you forgot. Our dreams. Our vows. Look around this village. No running water, empty schools, hopeless youth. What have you done for them?" The words hit Kaboré like a knife. "I took the reins of a country falling apart, Issouf. Under siege, abandoned, corrupt. I did what I could." "Excuses," Issouf cut in, his voice hard. "You've become a palace man, surrounded by sycophants, disconnected from the ground that raised you." "So you joined traitors?" Kaboré asked, shaken. "You, my brother." Issouf turned to the window, staring into the dust-filled courtyard. "I thought you betrayed our values. Justice, fairness, a Burkina for everyone, not just for Ouagadougou's elite. I believed only a jolt could awaken the people. You could have talked to me," murmured Kaboré, fists clenched. "We were brothers. Would you have listened?" Issouf countered. "Or sent another bureaucrat, like when the elders of Ouagadougou begged you for a water pump?" Kaboré lowered his eyes, struck by the truth. He had often delegated, overlooked, acted hastily. "Are you still that boy who wanted to change the world?" Issouf asked, his voice soft. "Or just another man guarding a crumbling throne?" Tears welled in Kaboré's eyes, grief, fury, shame tangled together. "I've made mistakes," he said, "but I've always been loyal. And yet you arrested a brother." "Sometimes friendship means facing hard truths," Issouf said, sadness in his eyes. "And sometimes betrayal remains betrayal," replied Kaboré, voice firm again. They locked eyes, each searching for the boy the other once was. "What now?" asked Issouf. Kaboré took out his phone and sent a message. "My duty, even if it breaks me." The door burst open. 4 soldiers entered, rifles raised. "Issouf Zongo, you're under arrest for high treason," declared a young officer. Issouf raised his wrists without resistance. His eyes never left Kaboré's. "I'm sorry, Amadou," he whispered as he was taken away. Left alone, Kaboré collapsed onto a wooden chair, his face buried in his hands. Outside, the sun was fading. No warmth left. The bleating of goats echoed like a mournful song.